What's up, ladies and gents? You know what time of day it is. It's XCN time, and in today's video we're going to be talking all about XCN. We're going to be discussing what we are seeing here on the charts, and I'll be giving you guys my price prediction for XCN over the coming days and weeks, as well as my targets for 2025. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that. Of course, if you are a new viewer, then welcome to this channel. If you do like this sort of content, hit the like button and subscribe for more. If you are a returning viewer, as always, welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you all here. So of course, we're going to be diving straight into this video. We're going to start off with the shorter term here for XCN. And of course, when we look at XCN, what has been happening over the past week, essentially the prices have been heading in some sort of downtrend. We can see that since that 25th of June peak, prices have just been heading downwards for the past week. Now, of course, we've had a resistance in the shorter term that looks something like this. And we've also had a support that, in my opinion, can be best described as something like this. Now, the nice thing about this potential thing that we are seeing here on the screen is that it could tell us that we could see something bullish in the near future. And that is because when we have two trend lines facing downwards like this that are converging into each other, which means that if we extend them out, you can see that the lines should eventually meet. That means that we have a potential falling wedge pattern here on the screen. Now, of course, a falling wedge is a bullish chart pattern, and we get that confirmation when we break past the upper resistance line. So that currently sits at 0.142 at the moment. And if we do see a breakout to the upside, then we can measure a potential price target from any such breakout as the distance between the first test of support to the first test of resistance. We just drag that measuring tool to wherever we may see a breakout. And as you can see, we get a potential 15% upside once we break out of this falling wedge. So that should take the prices to 0.0163 if we see a breakout. Now, of course, if you have been holding XCN, that might not sound too exciting, but if we do see a breakout from this shorter term falling wedge, that could trigger off something a lot larger here on XCN as well. Because if we just zoom out a little bit more here on XCN, things start to get even more interesting. So bear that target in mind, 0.016 in the very short term there if we see a breakout. Of course, what we also could potentially be seeing here on XCN, something that has popped up on my radar over the past few weeks, has been this potential triangle as well. So very similar to that falling wedge I showed you in the shorter term, we have a resistance that looks a little bit like this. You can see that it's encumbered. You can see that it's been tested on multiple different occasions throughout the course of the past few months. So we've seen 4 clear tests of this upper resistance line. With the support as well, we've had several tests now of the support, most recently just over the past few days. And so we have a fairly strong support and a fairly strong resistance going across like this. Now, of course, if we see a breakout from this triangle, then we can expect some magic to happen here on XCN, because of course, if we see a breakout to the upside of this triangle, then we could potentially be looking at a huge price target. Now, that price target, just like the falling wedge, is the distance between the first test of support, which is down here, to the first test of resistance, which is up here. And if we drag that measuring tool to wherever, again, we may see that breakout, then we've got a much more ambitious price target. Of course, that is a 260% upside, nearly a 4x from wherever we break out from this triangle. Now, of course, if that happens in the next few days, we could be looking at a price target here on XCN of 0.055. And going back to what I was saying about that falling wedge, you can see that the upper resistance at the moment sits at 0.0156. So in essence, if we hit that price target from that short-term falling wedge, it could take us also above this longer term resistance that we've been seeing here on XCN. And it also may trigger off this much larger price target going to 0.055. So potentially exciting prospect here for XCN sitting at 0.0156. Of course, guys, if you want to get $10 completely free to buy some XCN for this potential breakout, then don't forget to check out the MEXC exchange. As you can see on the screen, they're giving every new user who signs up using the link in the description down below, $10 to get started. And of course, guys, don't forget that this exchange as well does not require KYC to buy and sell crypto. So to claim that $10, all you need to do is deposit some fiat currency or crypto into your new account, and then they'll give you that $10 straight away. So like I say, you can simply buy some XCN with it, or you can take that $10 and long XCN with up to 20 times leverage using their futures exchange. Of course, guys, thank you so much for supporting this channel. Let's get back into this video. So of course, this upper resistance is definitely an important one to monitor if you want to catch any potential breakout here on XCN. Of course, that is the goal at the end of the day from these videos, to get you guys prepared for any such breakout, because we know on XCN that when we start to see a breakout from a resistance, they tend to happen quickly, just like what we saw here back in April. We can see that that 4x came extremely quick after we broke out from this upper resistance line. So same thing could potentially happen here on XCN if we get past this upper resistance. Now, on top of this potential pattern that we are seeing as well, if we have a look at XCN on an even longer time frame, we can see that XCN is following a very similar playbook to what it did between January to April within its downtrend back then. Now, of course, as the saying goes, history never repeats itself, but it often rhymes. And essentially, I do think that we have a lot of signs telling us that this consolidation that we are seeing here between April to July is very similar to what we saw back between January to April. So first, we have these two falling wedges that are very similar in nature. But on top of that as well, if we get the MACD on the one-day chart, we can see that the scheme just before XCN did this 4x pump from its falling wedge, we saw that the MACD started ticking up. So of course, the prices during this period were heading downwards, but the MACD was heading upwards. And of course, that is a bullish divergence. Now, if we have a look at the XCN price, it's still heading downwards as of July. But if we have a look at the one-day MACD, since mid-June, it's clearly been heading upwards. So we've got that same bullish divergence between the MACD and the price on the one-day chart. And of course, shortly after we saw this divergence, we saw prices take off to the upside back in April. So, over the next few days, we could potentially see something similar resulting from a breakout from the falling wedge here on XCN. Now, on top of that as well, have a look at the green bars that we are seeing. Of course, we saw the red bars first flip to green, but they only just went into green. That means there was a bit of bullish momentum, but not much. And then at some point, all of a sudden, we saw a massive takeoff. Now look again at the green bars that we have in July. The green bars have come to show themselves a little bit, but again, they're pretty low compared to the momentum that we saw in January and April. And of course, the trigger to the upside last time was the 200-day moving average. So this blue line here on the chart, in fact, I'm going to get rid of those drawings just so you can see it clearer. This was the trigger for XCN back in this period. So XCN doesn't like to spend a lot of time underneath its 200-day moving average, particularly since it's in a bullish trend in the very longer term. And what I mean by that is that generally speaking, it has been heading up for the past year or so. So during this uptrend, it doesn't want to spend much time below its 200-day moving average. And that was the trigger last time for this massive 4x pump. Now have a look at what the prices are doing right now. They're playing around with its 200-day moving average once again. So if history does repeat itself, we should be pretty close to a point where we see another breakout to the upside here on XCN. So of course, this is something that I think could happen within a matter of days. Of course, as I say, keep your eyes peeled, in my opinion, to this upper resistance line. That's the single most important thing. If the prices really start to break out to the upside, we really could get something like what we saw in January and what we saw in April, these massive pumps that don't last very long to the upside. So that's what I've got my eyes covered. So that's what I've got my eyes on here for XCN in the shorter term. That's for the next few days to weeks. Of course, talking about XCN in the longer term. So what I think XCN is going to do for 2025, my predictions for where the price is going to be going here on XCN fall along these fib levels. Now, these are fib levels that I have been monitoring because at the end of the day, you can see that the prices here on XCN really love to test them as places of support and resistance. So as the prices came down here in April, for example, they bounced off the 0.382 fib and did that massive explosion to the 0.786 fib. Now, of course, since they're well respected as places of support and resistance, we can use the fib levels to predict where the prices might be going in 2025. And of course, my main targets here for XCN are these upper two fib levels. So the first one there sits at 1.414. That's at 17 cents here on XCN, or 0.17. Of course, this is an important level, not just because of the fib, but it's also the previous all-time high here for XCN as well. So this could be a place where we see quite a lot of resistance. Now, if we get really bullish in 2025, then we could potentially see this 1.618 target hit at 0.32 here on the chart. So these upper two fib levels are my main price targets here for XCN. Of course, what we want to see in order for XCN to have the best possible chance of hitting these upper price targets are these two indicators on the CoinMarketCap homepage showing us favorable conditions. Now, of course, those two indicators are here on the homepage, and that is the Fear and Greed Index and the Altcoin Season Index. Now, what we want to see for the best possible chance of XCN to get into those price targets is this Altcoin Season Index heading above 75 and this Fear and Greed Index heading above 80. And essentially, this altcoin season index just measures how well altcoins are outperforming Bitcoin. The higher the value we have here, the more that altcoins as a whole are outperforming Bitcoin. And that's something we need to see if XCN is going to have the best possible shot. Now, this Fear and Greed Index is a sentiment indicator that measures the sentiment of the market. Essentially, the higher the number of this, the more positive emotion the market is feeling. So at above 80, we generally tend to see euphoria, we see extreme greed, and we kind of see these frenzies that when coupled with a high value for the altcoin season index, sends these small cap cryptos like XCN 2x, 5x, 10x, even 100x in the shortest amount of time. So if you were around for the 2021 bull run, right at the end of 2021, that's kind of when we saw a true altcoin season. You would remember that coins in hot categories at the time were doing these massive gains. Of course, this time around in 2025, I do believe XCN has a good shot because remember, it's in a very hot niche at the moment. It's in the payments category of crypto. I think that's going to be one of the leading categories here for crypto in 2025. All we really need to see is extreme greed and an altcoin season return to the markets. And when that happens, we should see coins like XCN heading to these upper price targets. So of course, guys, that is 17 cents as my first target and 32 cents as my main target here for XCN in 2025. And in terms of time frame, I do think that's going to be to the end of 2025, likely in November or December of 2025, if I had to guess. So, of course, hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for watching as always. Do have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys in my next video.